Town, the historic epithet, the Cape of Storms, reclaimed its dark significance as a relentless, multi-hazard weather system tore through Cape Town and the wider Western Cape Province. Triggered by a sequence of compounding deep-seated cold fronts advancing from the Southern Ocean, the metropolitan area was subjected to catastrophic gale-force winds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, torrential downpours, and violent storm surges. The South African Weather Service, SAWS, upgraded its alerts to a critical orange level 8 warning for disruptive rainfall and damaging winds. The result has been a trail of structural devastation, systemic municipal failures, widespread humanitarian crises, and tragic loss of life. Meanwhile, emergency teams, humanitarian organizations, and civic authorities scramble to stabilize the metropole. The true scale of the damage continues to expand exponentially. The disaster commenced in earnest when an initial cold front saturated the soil, setting a volatile stage for a secondary, far more aggressive weather system. Driven by an intense low-pressure system, the storm struck the Cape Peninsula with monumental kinetic force. Residents across the city reported an atmospheric transition that transformed ordinary evening conditions into a terrifying acoustic and physical assault. The topography of Cape Town, defined by the sheer precipices of Table Mountain, Lion's Head, and the dramatic coastal ranges, acted as a natural funnel. This geographical configuration generated localized, highly destructive microbursts and severe wind tunnels that tore through urban corridors and exposed coastal plains alike. Between the early morning hours and midday, the city's public emergency communications center was utterly inundated, logging more than 950 emergency calls in a mere 3.5-hour window. Call operators faced an unceasing barrage of reports detailing collapsed structures, uprooted trees, active electrical fires caused by downed power lines, and serious vehicular accidents. The maritime sector was brought to a virtual standstill as massive, foam-crested waves smashed against coastal breakwaters. The resulting sea surges spilled over into low-lying coastal roadways, rendering navigation near the ocean impossible, and threatening maritime infrastructure from Lambert's Bay down to Plettenberg Bay. The sheer velocity of the wind inflicted severe structural damage across both formal suburban neighborhoods and highly vulnerable informal settlements. The physical force of the wind proved capable of transforming standard building components into lethal flying debris. In established suburbs such as Wynberg, Claremont, Westridge, Mitchell's Plain, Hanover Park, and Goodwood, the structural integrity of numerous buildings was compromised. Roofs were completely detached from residential homes and commercial buildings, exposing interiors to the subsequent torrential rainfall. Large sheets of corrugated iron, roof tiles, and timber beams were flung across public roads, severing overhead utility lines and crushing parked vehicles. Brick boundary walls collapsed, and structural cladding was stripped from multi-story buildings. In Weinberg's Rockley Road, the combination of wind-driven structural debris and overflowing stormwater systems created impassable torrents of mud and urban waste. The most catastrophic structural impact was borne by the city's informal settlements, where high-density housing constructed from wood, plastic, and corrugated sheeting offered little resistance to the atmospheric violence. The city's Disaster Risk Management Department confirmed that at least 26 informal settlements across the metro were severely compromised or entirely destabilized. Communities such as Langrug, Luandel, Gugulethu, Crossroads, Philippi, Delft, and Portland's experienced unprecedented destruction. In Langrug and Luandel, the gale-force winds ripped roofs clean off thousands of shelters before the subsequent downpours flooded the exposed structures. According to updated disaster assessments, approximately 10,703 structures sustained severe weather-related damage, leaving an estimated 41,635 people directly affected, displaced, or plunged into immediate crisis. The hurricane-force wind gusts triggered a domino effect across Cape Town's critical engineering and utility infrastructure, crippling power grids, blocking transportation networks, and disrupting essential services. The energy grid suffered immense damage due to a combination of wind-induced mechanical stress and structural impacts from falling trees. High-voltage overhead lines were snapped or short-circuited by flying debris, plunging vast swaths of the city into darkness. Major electricity outages were recorded across a broad geographic spread. In the precarious terrain of Sir Lowry's Pass, Massive uprooted trees collapsed directly onto primary transmission lines, bringing live, high-voltage wires to the ground and creating extreme hazards for emergency responders. City energy teams, working in highly dangerous conditions amid ongoing gale winds and blinding rain, struggled to isolate damaged circuits and initiate complex grid repairs. The city's green infrastructure suffered an unprecedented toll. Millions of tons of vegetation were subjected to continuous mechanical stress, resulting in the uprooting of thousands of mature trees across the municipality. From the arterial M3 highway to the coastal enclave of Somerset West, massive trunks and heavy limbs snapped, blocking key transport routes, crushing residential boundary fences, and destroying municipal property. The city's recreation and parks teams, armed with heavy rescue equipment and chainsaws, were deployed across Goodwood, Durbanville, and the Deep South to systematically clear blocked thoroughfares and restore safe passage for emergency vehicles. The high winds severely disrupted the regional transportation network. High-sided vehicles, such as commercial trucks and buses, faced extreme instability on wind-exposed routes, prompting traffic law enforcement to close vulnerable bridges and elevated freeway segments. The aviation sector was similarly impacted. Cape Town International Airport experienced significant operational disruptions, with multiple domestic and international flights delayed, diverted, or canceled due to dangerous crosswinds and wind shear values that exceeded safe operational thresholds for commercial aircraft. On the ground, major roadways suffered structural failures, including localized road collapses and the formation of hazardous sinkholes, forcing the complete closure of critical intersections. Notable closures included Borchard's Quarry from the incoming N2 freeway, as well as the Old Mamre and Darling routes towards Atlantis. Beyond the immense structural and economic damage, the human cost of the storm has been devastating. Western Cape local government and environmental affairs authorities confirmed that the severe weather system claimed at least 5 fatalities across the province. These deaths were linked to hazardous conditions, including structural collapses and localized incidents directly caused by the storm's violence. The sheer scale of displacement has triggered an immediate regional humanitarian crisis. Government officials identified over 6,000 individuals in immediate need of emergency shelter, food, and clothing. In response, community halls, religious buildings, and temporary relief structures were activated as emergency evacuation centers. The City of Cape Town, collaborating closely with non-governmental humanitarian relief partners, initiated the distribution of thousands of hot meals, blankets, and emergency hygiene packs to displaced families, with plans to scale up assistance as broader logistical access is restored. Recognizing the severe risk posed to public safety, provincial authorities ordered the blanket closure of all schools across the Western Cape. Following urgent consultations between the Provincial Disaster Management Centre and meteorological experts, schools remained closed on Tuesday, May 12th, ensuring that hundreds of thousands of children were kept off dangerous roads and away from compromised school structures. Furthermore, iconic environmental and tourism landmarks across Table Mountain National Park were shut down due to extensive structural damage and unsafe conditions. South African National Parks, SAN Parks, closed several high-profile locations, including portions of the famous Boulders Penguin Colony Walkway, which suffered severe structural degradation from the pounding storm surge and relentless wind. Other ecological preserves, such as the Stony Point Nature Reserve, suspended all public access as boardwalks and visitor facilities were compromised by the coastal elements.